Shaquille O'Neal, known to the world as Big Shaq, had always been a larger-than-life figure. Despite his fame and fortune, Shaq had never forgotten where he came from. He always took pride in his humble beginnings and the friendships he had built along the way. However, when he discovered his childhood friend was homeless, you would not believe what his next move was. One cold evening, Shaq was driving through the streets of Orlando after attending a charity event. The city had changed over the years, but the memories of his youth still lingered. As he waited at a red light, something caught his eye. A man sitting on the sidewalk wrapped in a tattered blanket, his head bowed. Something about him seemed familiar. After a long day, all Shaq wanted to do was head home and sleep off the day's stress while preparing for the next. But something stopped him from driving off, and his mind lingered on the man he just saw sitting on the sidewalk. After a strong mental battle, his curiosity and empathy got the best of him, and he pulled over. Familiar or not, no one should be exposed in such extreme weather conditions. Stepping out of his luxury SUV, Shaq adjusted his suit and walked toward the man. As he got closer, his heart clenched, as memories from the past immediately flooded him. The man's frail face, worn by hardship, was unmistakable. Staring in shock, Shaq shook his head in disbelief. His throat immediately went dry as he stepped closer. "Jamal?" Shaq's deep voice cracked with disbelief. The man, who looked as though he was passed out on the sidewalk, looked up, his tired eyes widening as they landed on the man before him. "Shaq?" It was Jamal Robinson, Shaq's childhood best friend. They had grown up together, playing basketball at the local courts, dreaming of making it big. While Shaq had skyrocketed to fame, Jamal's path had taken a different path. He had always been the smart one, excelling in school, but life had been unkind to him. Tears welled up in Big Shaq's eyes. He just could not believe that his childhood friend, with whom he had shared a lot of memories, dreams, and aspirations, was seated on the sidewalk, homeless and looking hopeless. Still in shock, Shaq crouched beside him. "What happened, man?" Jamal hesitated before letting out a deep sigh. "Life happened, bro. Lost my job, my house, everything. School started cutting budgets, and I was one of the first to go. Tried to bounce back, but one thing led to another. And here I am." Shaq's heart ached. He couldn't believe that someone he had once called his brother was now struggling to survive. He could not even bear to see him in that state one more minute. Without hesitation, he stood up. "You're coming with me. No arguments." Despite his willingness to help, Shaq could see the look of resignation in his old friend's eyes, and he knew that it was going to take more than words to convince him to come along. "Please come with me," he repeated, his voice softer this time. Jamal shook his head. "I appreciate it, man, but I don't want to be a burden." Shaq's eyes softened. "You would never be a burden to me, Jamal. Come on, let's go." Reluctantly, Jamal accepted. That night, Shaq took him to a 5-star hotel and made sure he had a warm meal, fresh clothes, and a comfortable bed. As they talked, Jamal opened up about the hardships he had faced. Losing his teaching job, struggling to find work, falling behind on rent, and how one unfortunate event led to another, spiraling into homelessness. Jamal took a deep breath before continuing, his voice laced with the weight of years past. He explained how, after his parents moved away from the neighborhood, they had slowly lost touch. At first, there were occasional phone calls and holiday visits, but as time went on, life pulled them in different directions. Eventually, the calls stopped, and before he knew it, he was navigating the world alone. Despite the loneliness, he had a dream, one that kept him pushing forward. Basketball had been his passion since childhood, and he was determined to make it. He spent countless hours practicing, perfecting his skills, and working toward a future in professional sports. The court was his sanctuary, the one place where he felt unstoppable. But fate had other plans. One tragic day, everything changed. Jamal was involved in a devastating accident that left him with injuries too severe to continue his pursuit of the game he loved. His dreams of making it to the big leagues were shattered in an instant. The doctors told him he would never play at a professional level, and for a while he refused to believe it. He tried to push through the pain, but deep down, he knew the truth. His career as an athlete was over before it even began. Forced to find a new path, Jamal turned to teaching. It wasn't basketball, but it gave him a different kind of fulfillment. He discovered a passion for helping others, guiding young minds, and watching his students grow. Teaching became his purpose, and though the pain of his lost dream never fully faded, he found solace in making a difference in the lives of his students. But life wasn't done testing him. Despite his dedication to his job, financial struggles started piling up. Teachers weren't paid nearly enough, and unexpected expenses kept arising. Medical bills from his past injuries, rent increases, and student loans left him barely scraping by. He took on extra tutoring jobs, but it still wasn't enough. Then came the final blow. Budget cuts led to layoffs at the school where he worked. Jamal was one of the teachers let go. He tried to find another teaching position, but opportunities were scarce. The stress of unemployment drained his savings, and soon he found himself unable to keep up with rent. Before he knew it, he was out on the streets, carrying everything he owned in a single bag. The transition from being a respected teacher to a man struggling to survive had been unexpected and brutal. He had gone from training young minds to wondering where his next meal would come from. For a while, he felt invisible, just another forgotten soul in a city that never slowed down. But now, sitting across from Shaq, telling his story, Jamal realized that maybe his journey wasn't over. Maybe, just maybe, life was offering him a second chance. Shaq listened intently, his mind already racing with plans. He wasn't just going to help Jamal for one night. He was about to change his life for good. He had always believed that real success wasn't about what you had, but what you did for others. And in this moment, he knew exactly what he had to do. The next morning, Shaq woke up with a mission. He wasted no time making calls, setting up meetings, and pulling every string he could. By midday, he had a plan in motion. This wasn't charity, it was a fresh start, and he was determined to see Jamal stand on his own 2 feet. When Jamal woke up, still adjusting to the luxury of his surroundings, he found Shaq waiting for him with a mischievous grin. "Get dressed, bro. We got somewhere to be," Shaq said, his excitement barely contained. Jamal hesitated, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "Where are we going?" Shaq just winked. "You'll see." They drove across town, eventually pulling up in front of a sleek office building. The lobby was bright and modern, filled with busy professionals moving with purpose. Jamal glanced at Shaq, confused. Inside, a group of well-dressed people greeted them with warm smiles. Shaq placed a reassuring hand on Jamal's shoulder. "I got you a job, man. A real fresh start." Jamal's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Shaq nodded. "You've always been good with people, always had a way of teaching and guiding others. So you'll be working in an education outreach program, full salary, benefits, everything you need to start over." Jamal's hands trembled. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take it," Shaq said, grinning. Jamal swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll take it." But Shaq wasn't finished. He led Jamal back to the car, and they drove a few blocks to a modern apartment complex. Standing outside one of the units, Shaq pulled out a small set of keys and handed them to Jamal. "This is yours," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Your own place. No more streets, no more struggling." Jamal stared at the keys in disbelief, then back at Shaq. This is too much." Shaq shook his head. "Nah, man, you're family, and family looks out for each other." Jamal couldn't hold back his emotions anymore. He broke down, pulling Shaq into a tight hug. "Thank you, bro. Thank you for everything." Shaq smiled, patting Jamal on the back. "You're welcome. Now let's get you back on your feet." That day, Jamal's life changed forever, all thanks to an old friend who never forgot the value of true friendship. Jamal adjusted quickly to his new job, proving that he still had the intelligence and drive that once made him a promising young man. He worked tirelessly, impressing his employers, and quickly made his mark. Shaq checked in on him regularly, making sure he was adjusting well. One evening, the two met for dinner at a high-end steakhouse, and for the first time in years, Jamal looked truly happy. He was well-dressed, confident, and optimistic about the future. Jamal settled into his new job with remarkable ease, proving that the intelligence and drive he once possessed had never truly left him. The corporate world was new territory, but he approached it with the same determination he once had on the basketball court. He arrived early, stayed late, and absorbed every lesson like a sponge. His natural leadership skills emerged quickly, and his ability to connect with people made him invaluable to the company. Within weeks, he was recognized for his dedication and promoted to a managerial position, a role he had never imagined himself in not long ago. Shaq kept a close eye on him, always checking in to make sure he was adjusting well. Despite his busy schedule, he made time to visit Jamal, offering encouragement and advice. One evening, Shaq invited him to dinner at a high-end steakhouse, a place where business executives and celebrities dined. It was a setting Jamal would have once felt out of place in, but now he walked through the doors with confidence. As they sat at a corner table, the warm glow of candlelight reflecting off polished silverware, Jamal couldn't help but take in his surroundings. The last time he had been in a restaurant like this, his life had been completely different. Now he was wearing a well-fitted suit, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. He looked across the table at Shaq, the man who had extended a hand when he needed it most. As they ate, Jamal spoke about his work, the excitement he felt in his new role, and the sense of accomplishment that came with earning his own success. He had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. At the end of the night, they stepped out onto the busy street. The air was warm, the city lights twinkling like the stars above. Jamal paused for a moment, looking up at the sky. It felt different now, full of endless possibilities. Shaq placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You ready for the next chapter?" Jamal let out a deep breath, a genuine smile forming on his face. "More than ever." Their journey didn't end there. As time passed, Jamal found himself not just thriving in his career, but also giving back in ways he never expected. His experience had changed him, making him more compassionate, more aware of those who struggled. He began mentoring younger employees, offering guidance and support to those trying to find their own paths. His background in teaching helped him train new hires, and he took pride in seeing them grow. But it wasn't just the workplace where Jamal made a difference. On weekends, he volunteered at local shelters, sharing his story with those who felt lost. He spoke to young athletes, kids with big dreams but little direction, and encouraged them to never give up, because he had been there once. He knew what it felt like to lose everything, but he also knew the power of a helping hand. Months later, Jamal stood in his apartment, looking around at everything he had built for himself. A steady job, a home, a future. Things that had once seemed so far out of reach. He wasn't the same man Shaq had found on the streets. He was stronger, wiser, and more grateful than ever. Then one afternoon, his phone buzzed. "Yo, man, how about a little one-on-one? You still got that jumper?" Jamal chuckled as he grabbed his sneakers. "Let's find out." The basketball court felt familiar beneath his feet, just like it had all those years ago. As he and Shaq took their shots, laughing and trash-talking like old times, he realized something. This wasn't just a comeback. This was a new beginning, or not. For Jamal, this wasn't just a fresh start. It was a second chance, something he never thought he'd get. Life had been unkind, forcing him to struggle for every little thing. He had lost hope more times than he could count, convinced that his past mistakes had sealed his fate. But now, things were different. For the first time in years, he saw a way forward, a path that didn't lead to disappointment or regret. He had someone who believed in him, someone willing to help him change his story. That person was Shaq. Shaq knew exactly what it meant to be poor, to go without, to feel invisible in a world that moved on without him. He had once stood in Jamal's shoes, feeling lost and forgotten. He had to face many challenges in his life and career. He dealt with racism and unfair treatment, which made things harder for him. Growing up without money meant he had to fight for every chance to succeed. Similar to Jamal's situation, injuries threatened to stop him from playing, but he pushed through the pain. He also had conflicts with his teammates and NBA staff, making it hard to work together. People judged him based on stereotypes, assuming things about him before knowing his true abilities. On top of that, he had family problems that made life even more stressful. But life had given him a gift, the kindness of good people who had lifted him when he had nothing. He never forgot what it felt like to be at rock bottom, and he made sure to appreciate how far he had come. Still, one regret remained. He wished he had found Jamal sooner. Maybe then he could have eased his suffering. But now at least he could make sure Jamal never felt alone again. Would Big Shaq have felt the same empathy and compassion if Jamal hadn't been his childhood friend? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.